Let's just start with the number. It's a big one. 304 million. That's how many people, right now, are living in a country they weren't born in. To put that in perspective, that's almost 4% of every single person on the planet.
So the big question is, where is everyone headed? Now, you probably have a few usual suspects in mind, right? But the real story, well, it's a lot more complicated and honestly, pretty surprising. Let's dig in.
All right, let's start with the big players. The countries that have been magnets for people for decades. But as we're about to see, even their stories are changing in really interesting ways.
No surprise here, the U.S. is just in a league of its own, home to over 50 million migrants. I mean, that's more than the entire population of Spain. Germany and Saudi Arabia fill out the top three. But, and this is the key part, the reasons people go to these places are totally different.
Yeah, and this is where you really see the different strategies at play. Think of the U.S. as this giant economic magnet. It's the world's biggest economy. It pulls people in with opportunity, and it has these long-standing family-based policies. Germany, though, it's become this dual hub, a safe haven for refugees, especially after 2015, while also actively recruiting highly skilled workers for its booming tech and healthcare industries. Now let's look at a totally different contrast. You've got Saudi Arabia, where a staggering 39% of the population is foreign-born. But they're mostly temporary workers on a sponsorship system with almost no path to citizenship. It's a revolving door. Then you have Canada. They're all about permanent settlement, using a points-based system to attract the skilled people they need and giving them a very clear path to becoming citizens. Two completely different philosophies.
So, we've talked about the big names, but honestly, one of the biggest, most important shifts in global migration right now is happening somewhere you might not expect. We need to turn our attention to Latin America, because there's a quiet revolution going on.
Just look at this, plus 23%. That's the spike in the migrant population in Latin America and the Caribbean in just the last few years. That's not just growth. That is a massive, massive shift. It tells us the region isn't just a place people leave anymore, it's become a major destination itself.
So where are all these people coming from? This is the kicker. Check out this chart. A whopping 80% of this movement is happening within the region, people moving from one Latin American country to another. This completely flips the old script of everyone just heading north.
So what's driving this? Why are so many people moving within the region? Well, it's not just one thing. It's a whole new playbook, a mix of new reasons and new destinations that are completely reshaping the continent.
It helps to break it down into three main groups, three new kinds of migrants we're seeing. First, those seeking refuge from crisis, like the Venezuelan diaspora. Second, you have people seeking a new lifestyle, think digital nomads and retirees. And third, a group that's seeking a new passport, often through investment.
Let's start with the first group, and it's a truly heartbreaking story, the Venezuelan displacement. We're talking about over 7.7 million people who've had to flee their homes since 2014. This is the single largest displacement in the history of the Americas. And look where they're going. The top host countries aren't in Europe or North America. They're neighbors like Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador who have taken in millions. Okay, now let's shift gears to a completely different story. The lifestyle seekers. These are the remote workers, the digital nomads, the retirees who are realizing they can have an incredible quality of life in Latin America for a fraction of the cost. And countries are getting smart about this. They're rolling out special digital nomad visas. I mean, when you can live in an amazing city like Medellin for around $1,000 a month, you can see why it's so appealing. But this movement of people creates another huge flow, a flow of money going in the opposite direction. We're talking about remittances, the money migrants send back home. And in Latin America, it's not a trickle, it's an absolute economic lifeline. Just try to wrap your head around this number, $174.4 billion. That's the amount of money expected to be sent home to Latin America and the Caribbean in 2025. That's more than the entire economic output of a country like Hungary. For so many nations, this isn't just extra cash, it's everything.
Now, Mexico gets the biggest slice of that pie in raw dollars, a massive $66 billion. But to really understand the impact, you have to look at the smaller countries. For places like Honduras and El Salvador, that money makes up somewhere between 15 and 25% of their entire national GDP. It's more than foreign aid, more than investment. It's what's keeping the lights on for millions of families.
Okay, so after all that, what's the big picture? What's the main takeaway from this whole global shift?
Here's the bottom line. The old story of migration.
people moving from the global south to the global north just for a job, that story is over. It's outdated. What we have now is this incredibly complex web. It's about seeking refuge, it's about finding a new lifestyle, it's about investment, and all of it is reshaping entire regions right before our eyes.
And that leaves us with one big question for the future. We've seen how much things have already changed, but now, with huge forces like climate change and the remote work revolution just getting started, what do you think this global migration map is going to look like in another 10 years? The one thing we know for sure is that it won't look like it does today.